Good evening, folks. I hope you're making the most of your Tuesday out there, wherever you're at. Snicky Steve's here. The conference championship rounds are in the books. Now we got the Pro Bowl. I don't know how many people care, but we do have the Pro Bowl. Then after that, Super Bowl 59. Let's recap how we got here.
Fasten your seatbelts for the realest Eagles and Sixers YouTuber! One who plays no clickbait and gets to the point! The myth, the legend, Nicky Steves! Come to my channel, you know the deal, yo boy, always keeps things real. I'm simply statue, think they slate, dropping unrealistic mags, 2K takes for the clip. Even though cats like that get views closer to the milli, never hear me preach, look on to Philly. Before you watch the Eagles all the way through the early 22, authentic talk, forget what others do. Come to my channel, you know the deal, yo boy, always keeps things real. The 24/7, 365 way, sports content for the reals to fill the day.
Hello, good evening, folks. We got Braden stopping by in the chat. Yo, good evening. And now here we are. We're ready to talk about it. The conference championship round is in the books. And we got ourselves a rematch from Super Bowl 57 and Super Bowl 59 just 2 years later. It all started with the conference championship game at Lincoln Financial Field, just like it was 2 years ago, except this time it was the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Washington Commanders. The Eagles dismantled the Commanders 55-23 off the backs of 4 turnovers and just blowing them away in the fourth quarter. Once that fumble on Austin Eckler happened in the third quarter where it was still a competitive game, the Commanders quit after that. I mean, they quit after that. The Eagles were just rubbing it in after that. All those extra score touchdowns they scored was just rubbing in scores at that point. The Commanders, you could see they were defeated. They're like, all right, we made it this far. We're proud of how far we made it, but this is where it ends. Nice making this run while we had the chance to type of vibe. You could see the Commanders quit. They basically were like, yeah, nice run while it lasted, but it's over. And for the Philadelphia Eagles, another Super Bowl appearance. This time, a rematch with the Kansas City Chiefs. Hopefully this time's a charm for us as Eagles fans. And the big story of this one was Saquon Barkley. Not just as an Eagles fan, but as a football fan in general. We got to talk about it. Saquon came in off the New York Giants, went from a squad where he was the best player on the offense to now being on the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that just one season before, when he got drafted into the NFL, the Eagles were fresh off their first Super Bowl win. The year he made his first playoff appearance as a member of the Giants. The Giants lost to the conference champion Eagles in the divisional round. And now Saquon's joining that same Philadelphia Eagles team. And his first season there, he nearly breaks the single season rushing record, is in runner-up for MVP discussion. He may still get the vote, and he's going to start in the Super Bowl. And Saquon Barkley, all he needed was a better offensive line, better wide receivers, a better quarterback, and that's what he got. You could say what you want about Jalen Hurts. You could say he's a game manager, but not a true superstar. That's a matter of opinion. I can respect that. But he also had A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, hell of an offensive line, Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, Jordan Mailata, some of those guys, respected players. And you saw he didn't have as much pressure on him to carry the load for the offense as he did with the Giants. Because with the Giants, they didn't really have any. Name me one significant player that the Giants had outside of Saquon Barkley. And if you are listening to this, you're probably struggling to think of an answer because I am too. And the reason why is because they didn't have a significant player on that offense outside of Saquon. He was their offense. And he had a lot of pressure on him. He basically had to carry the weight of the offense, and it led to him getting injured numerous times. But then he comes to Philadelphia. He didn't have as much pressure on him to excel because he has Jalen Hurts, a dual threat quarterback. Dallas Goedert, who doesn't always get the most targets, but when he does, he makes those one or two plays that can make a difference in the game. A.J. Brown, who's truly shown to be a top 5 receiver now that he's got a quarterback that can consistently throw him the ball, which he did not have in Tennessee when they were predominantly known as a run team. And Devontae Smith, an excellent second option. Not as much pressure. Saquon was able to dominate more with less pressure on him, and he was able to stay healthy for the entire road to the Super Bowl. And that's the big story there. Saquon Barkley gets his redemption. And this reminds you that sometimes a change in scenery or where you get drafted can be a huge factor on a player's career. It can make all the difference in the world. See Drew Brees, how a change in scenery from San Diego to New Orleans. Look at the wonders it did for his career. Now you see Saquon Barkley is another example going from the Giants to the Eagles. It's amazing how that change in scenery can change everything. And it's not just Saquon Barkley. It's this whole team, too. You could see from last year to this year, the Philadelphia Eagles were a much better coached team than they were in 2023. 2023, they had a lot of talent there. They had the talent to potentially make another run. They start off the season 10-1. At that point, you're thinking, man, it's only a matter of time before we get back to the Super Bowl. Maybe we pull off the feat that the Dallas Cowboys, during their first 2 Super Bowl appearances, Super Bowl 5 and 6, and the Dolphins, Super Bowl 6 and 7, or the Patriots, 52 and 53. We pull up that feat of losing one but coming back and winning the next year. It looked like it was going to be that way in 2023, but then the late season collapse happened. The poor offensive schemes of Brian Johnson, the poor defensive coaching of Sean Desai, and eventually Matt Patricia came in to play, and it caused the Eagles to collapse and get embarrassed in the wild card round. But one offseason later, you get Kellen Moore, a veteran at play calling who actually has experience in these situations behind helping call the shots. You had on the defensive side, Vic Fangio, an experienced defensive coordinator, stepping in. Now, there were some question marks at first as to whether or not he could get the job done, considering what happens in Miami. But I feel like Fangio's style works better with the core he has in Philly than it did with Miami. And you saw that throughout the season. Early on, the Eagles defense, well, the first, they did actually do decent early. They did do solid throughout the season. The only really bad game they had early during that 2-2 stretch was the Tampa game. But by the time we got back from the bye week, the defense started to click. You could see that Fangio's style rubbed off better on the Eagles players than it did the Dolphins players. Whereas that Fangio hard-nosed coaching style didn't really work with Miami because a lot of those guys, they like the big contracts and they like the party life in Miami, which is one of the problems with having, well, at least that's the way it came across. I'm not going to say that's what happened, but it kind of came across that way. But in Philly, Philly's a city that I feel is better suited for Fangio's style of coaching, and it clearly shows. This defense, especially in the conference championship game, forced 4 turnovers to get to the Super Bowl against a top-flight offense in the Commanders, who are red-hot momentum-wise, fresh off defeating the Detroit Lions. You can see that. You saw this year the Eagles, who had less talent on paper than the previous year, but had better coaching and better structure, went further, made the run all the way to the Super Bowl. And they're not now, the rematch with Kansas City awaits. Let's see what we do this time. Can Vic Fangio lead a better game plan against Mahomes in Kansas City than Jonathan Gannon did 2 years ago on the defensive side? Because that was part of the reason, not the only reason, but part of the reason we lost that Super Bowl 2 years ago was the defense falling apart under Jonathan Gannon that in the most important game of the year. I believe Vic Fangio on paper has the potential to do better, but we're going to dive more into that later. We're just going to say this with the Eagles. Clearly, you could see the difference between the unstructured and undisciplined Eagles of 2023 versus the disciplined and structured Eagles of 2024. Which team went further? You saw it. It's the 2024 Eagles. And now, they're back to the Super Bowl for the second time in 3 years. And we look at this Eagles team. I'm looking at the roster. On paper, this team does seemingly have a stronger, on the offensive side, they have a stronger roster, slightly stronger roster with the addition of Saquon Barkley. Because Miles Sanders, who played good that season and made the Pro Bowl last time we made it to the stage against Kansas City, he still had some fumbling issues, and he didn't have the same dominant season that Saquon did. You saw Miles Sanders, a change in scenery from Philly to Carolina, that completely destroyed his career. Whereas Saquon Barkley, changing scenery from the Giants to the Eagles, caused his career to excel. So also let Miles Sanders, the running back from 2 seasons ago, be another prime example of how a change in scenery can ultimately make or break a player. In this case, hey, Saquon Barkley, I feel like he could be the missing piece in this one. He could have been the missing piece we didn't have last time that could help us get over the hump and defeat the Kansas City Chiefs this time around. Because we saw throughout the season, he was the X factor. He was the MVP for this team. And all-star, that opening drive, he marched right down the field, got in the end zone, touchdown. We're set. And, that set the tone now for the rest of the game. That opening drive. Saquon Barkley had that amazing run. And that was the big factor right there. The MVP, it's only fitting that our MVP helped set the tone early in the Super Bowl. In the conference championship that helped us win it. So now for the Eagles, hey, it's a great moment for us as Eagles fans. Great moment for the city of Philadelphia. We get another big moment. We defeat our division rival, the Washington Commanders, in what looked like a trap game on paper, but hey, we got the job done. We did what we needed to. And as much as, hey, I'm an Eagles fan, so I'm obviously biased. But to be fair, I kind of let my bias shine on that Sunday stream where I was shouting out the Eagles on a job well done. And with that being said, though, I do have to be fair, and I got to talk a little bit about the Washington Commanders here. And I got to give them a shout. Give them acknowledgement. Give me 1 second. All right, we cool. Yeah, just wanted to check something real quick. But yes, the Commanders, I got to give them credit. Amazing run. The future for the Washington Commanders looks bright. Jayden Daniels had himself a phenomenal rookie season. Between him and Bo Nix, it's not even close. Jayden Daniels is the offensive rookie of the year for sure. That young man had a phenomenal season. He took a Washington Commanders team that struggled under center with Sam Howell last season, put Daniels in, and he turned them into contenders year one. They go to the conference championship game, greatly exceeding any expectations we had for them. Just a phenomenal. You can't help but to give credit for Jayden Daniels. And Dan Quinn, too. He's making the most of his second chance as a head coach. That's a great first season to redeem himself. I mean, the Commanders had a solid defense, too, throughout the season. But offense, I mean, offense was the shining star for that team. And I'm telling you, as an Eagles fan, look out for the Commanders in the future because that Eagles Commanders rivalry is going to start to rejuvenate itself and become the top rivalry in the NFC East in the years to come. You watch. The years of us being superior to the Commanders, beating them majority of the time, them being the laughing stock, them being the team that we usually get 2 free wins over, looks like that era is over. Even though we beat them in the regular season, beat them in the conference championship, the fact they made it far to the conference championship with a rookie quarterback indicates those days are over. And for the Commanders, if Jaden Daniels just steps up a little bit year 2, as long as he doesn't have a sophomore slump like CJ Stroud did, they'll be in command to become contenders next season. But that also depends on whether, he suffers the CJ Stroud sophomore slump. But that's a whole nother subject for another time. There's a whole off season. We'll see what Washington does during the off season. Are they able to pull off a trade? Do they get a free agent to sign with them with the hopes of winning? We will have to see what happens. But hey, shout out to the Washington Commanders. Even as a fan division rival, I got to respect what they did, man. I'm telling you, those games are going to make for competitive games for years to come. No, but before I switch it up, I did want to show something that was cool. You kind of had Zach Ertz and Fletcher Cox shared a bonding moment after the game. Because remember, these two guys, longtime teammates with the Eagles. But you see there, right? Zach Ertz, his longtime teammate from the Philadelphia Eagles, shared a moment. I'm sure Zach Ertz went on the field and congratulated a lot of the other players too. I'm sure probably him and Lane Johnson had a discussion where he congratulated Lane. I'm sure he congratulated Fletcher Cox. Probably ran into Brandon Graham, congratulated him. But the point being, though, is, hey, I'm sure for Zach Ertz, the one takeaway from it for him is that he's happy to see his former team win. And speaking of former Eagles, Nick Foles was there on Broad Street for the parade with his wife because Nick Foles knows all about this. But, man, hey, Eagles are on to the Super Bowl. We'll see what's next. But I'll be back in just a second, folks. When I come back, we're going to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs and them beating the Buffalo Bills and where the Buffalo Bills go from here as well. So I'll be right back in a moment. We'll talk about that. Hey, I'm back, folks. Hello, Daniel Berry stopping by. Happy Tuesday indeed. And now, talked about the Philadelphia Eagles, them destroying the Washington Commanders, and Saquon Barkley and that defense and their road to the Super Bowl. Now it's time to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs and their road to the Super Bowl. I mean, honestly, look, expectations for them. What did we expect? Let's face it. I know a lot of people don't like them. They wanted Kansas City to lose, but we have to be realistic. The only teams we really saw as a threat were the Buffalo Bills and Baltimore Ravens. Bills and Ravens played each other in the divisional round. Bills won, earned the right to play Kansas City again, and we got the game. And what ultimately happened Kansas City beat them for the 4th time in the playoffs in the past 5 seasons. It's just the bottom line is they just have the Buffalo Bills number. That's the bottom line. I had a feeling it was going to happen. And for me, as the game was going along and it was going back and forth, especially like in the second half, I wasn't actually, on YouTube. I was listening to Tom Grossi's play-by-play and reaction to it because I had a long day and I was kind of drained. But I was listening to the second half. Once it got to that point where it was going back and forth, as Buffalo got the ball back, even before they turn over on downs, the second time they did it in the second half, I'm thinking in my mind, it's a back and forth game between these two teams. We know how this plays out. It plays out with Kansas City winning anytime these two teams go back and forth. And what happened? You bet it went back and forth. Kansas City got the win. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that's how it went down. Yep, Kansas City Chiefs beat the beat the Buffalo Bills at another close competitive game. To me, it was a classic example of the Buffalo Bills doing the same thing, getting caught up in the trap of going back and forth with Kansas City, expecting a different outcome. But it's not even just that. It's throughout the whole season. When games go back and forth involving Kansas City, what's the end result? Kansas City finds a way to win, no matter what. And one thing is, whoever you are, in this case, coming up, my team, the Philadelphia Eagles, you cannot get caught up in the game of going back and forth with Kansas City on the scoreboard because you're not going to beat them that way. To me, the only way to beat them is to get a sizable lead on them and build up sizable momentum. To me, that's the only way I see the Eagles beating them, which I'll talk about that more in a minute. But I'll talk about that later. But for now, let's talk about the Chiefs-Buffalo game. Because Buffalo, to their credit, they didn't turn the ball over. Josh Allen didn't throw any interceptions. They did their best to stay in this game. They only gave up 2 sacks. But the biggest thing was they couldn't close drives. There were 2 drives in the second half where Buffalo turned the ball over on downs. They had a 12-play 80-yard drive, start the second half, up by 1, they were up by 1. They tried to go for, no, it was a 9-play, sorry. What was that? Yeah, it was a 9-play drive. They were up by 1. They went for it. They didn't convert. Kansas City scored a touchdown. Then Buffalo came right back with a touchdown of their own, tied the game. Kansas City kicked a field goal. Then late in the game, Buffalo, on their final drive, incomplete pass on 4th down, game was over. That was the big deciding factor in this one right here. Being unable to convert on 4th down, Kansas City's defense holds up twice, and they once again defeat the Buffalo Bills. And the bottom line is, love them or hate them, this team has Buffalo's number. They do. And you got to wonder now, with Kansas City, we know that. Andy Reid as the head coach. Andy Reid finally got himself that star quarterback that he was missing. He had Donovan McNabb in Philadelphia, who was a Pro Bowler and was a star, but he was never a truly elite quarterback. Even as an Eagles fan, I'll admit it. Then he goes to Kansas City. He gets himself Alex Smith, who was a good quarterback, but wasn't an elite quarterback that could help them compete with teams like the Patriots and the Broncos at the time. Then they get Patrick Mahomes, and you see what this team is. Now we're at that point where Kansas City has an elite quarterback. They have top tight end in the game in Travis Kelce. They got themselves a speedy receiver in Xavier Worthy, Juju Smith-Schuster. Patrick Mahomes knows how to click with all these guys, no matter who it is. And you got their defense. They still got decent pieces in Trent McDuffie, Nick Bolton, Drew Tranquill. They still have themselves a solid core. And Kansas City has one of the best defensive coaches in the game as well. And it all started really in that after they lost that Super Bowl to Tampa Bay and got blown out, they realized, yeah, we need to get better on defense. And they brought in Steve Spagnuolo. And it's just, and obviously it makes a difference. You see him leading the way. This Kansas City defense always finds a way to get it done. Even throughout the regular season when Mahomes wasn't having the greatest games, that defense found ways to stop them. Chris Jones, a wrecking force, who was injured in the AFC Championship game. But we don't know if he's going to be back yet or not. But the bottom line is that team's back. They got themselves a great defensive mind, and they got themselves an elite quarterback, which are the two main reasons they're at this stage. As you thought throughout this season, on the defensive side, when Mahomes wasn't on his A game, the defense stepped up. In this game, Mahomes was on, the offense was on. Kareem Hunt didn't have the greatest game, but he was good enough. Kareem Hunt gets his revenge story here. Originally he lost his spot on Kansas City due to an off-the-field incident early in his career. He went to Cleveland for a few years, had some success there, but ultimately in the long term it ran its course. He comes back to Kansas City, not the same flashy back he was early in the season, early in his career, but he was still good enough. He played his role at times, and he helped this offense out. And now you see Kansas City, kind of like the New England Patriots. You got that elite quarterback. You got good defensive mind. You got a great offensive mind there. And you got, you're at that point where you can get those good role players that mesh well with a star quarterback, similar to what New England did. You can now see the similarities beside all the Super Bowl appearances and all the wins. Back in the Brady era, was getting guys like Dante Stallworth, even role receivers like Jabbar Gaffrey, who did good under Brady. Guys like Deion Branch, who wasn't the greatest receiver, but he clicked well with Brady. You see that now. You see some parallels there. Juju Smith-Schuster, not the best receiver in the world, but he clicks well with Brady, with Mahomes. Hollywood Brown, sometimes he's an effective weapon. He's not the greatest receiver in the world, sometimes he helps out. And then you got Travis Kelce, the elite tight end, always that go-to target. Everything's clicking for this Kansas City team. And now you see, once again, they defeat the Buffalo Bills. It's one of those things to beat this team. Kansas City, to beat them, you got to get a sizable lead on them. Like I said, you can't go back and forth with them. But especially being that Patrick Mahomes, he knows how to be calm in pressure situations. He can easily just remain calm in those pressure situations. Step back. Make those plays. He's used to it by now. He's got the right talent around him. The defense, they know how to step up and make the right plays at the right time. Sure, they gave up 29 in this one, but they stopped 2 fourth down conversions when that could have led to touchdown. It could have led to touchdowns or field goals from Buffalo that could have changed the outcome of the game. But those 2 fourth down stops played a key role in Kansas City winning this game and getting back to the Super Bowl, folks. So I gotta say, man, shout out to the Kansas City Chiefs, man. They did their thing, and they moving on off to the Super Bowl again. And now that brings us to a rematch. Super Bowl 59, Kansas City Chiefs versus Philadelphia Eagles. Now we know who the odds-on favorites are going to be. It's going to be Kansas City. It's going to be Kansas City because they've done this before. They've been there, done that, won multiple Super Bowls with the current core. But we'll have to wait and see. I mean, this is going to be a really good matchup. It should be either way, just from a football fan standpoint. Obviously, from an Eagles fan standpoint, I want my team to win, get the dub, and get back at them. But I'll talk about that more as we get to next week. But for now, all I can say is, hey, it was a nice road to the Super Bowl. I mean, Kansas City Chiefs, they remained in the driver's seat all season. Even though they seemed vulnerable at times, They always found ways to win. That's what happens, though, when you have good coaching and you have great players around you. Philadelphia Eagles had a lot of talent around them, needed to make some adjustments to the coaching and the way they structure their team. After last season, they did that, get back to the Super Bowl, have a chance to get the revenge against the Kansas City Chiefs. So we'll have to see what's going to go down there. We'll talk about that more next week as we get closer to the game. So I'm going to leave it at that for tonight, man. To everyone that tuned in, I greatly appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this, whether you caught all of it, part of it, whatever the case may be. Hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't done so, please do me a favor. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe to whatever platform you're on. And until next time, it's going to be your boy Nicky Stees signing off. Fly, Eagles, fly. Can't wait for the Super Bowl. Let's see what goes down. Catch you next time.